So, welcome to We Are Napier, the podcast that shares alumni stories, helps to set resilient skills into context and prepare you for a changing world. I'm Dave Jarrold. I'll be your host for this episode, and I'm joined today by Kieran Scott. Kieran, hi, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
No, it's great. Appreciate you sharing your time and sharing some of your insights and your experiences that you've been through since before Napier and beyond. So we'll run through all of it. Can I ask you to kick us off by just say a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Kieran Scott. I'm the head of communications at Change Mental Health. Change Mental Health is a national mental health charity. We've been providing non-clinical and person-centred mental health support to communities across Scotland. Been a charity for over 50 years, starting off as a charity supporting people experiencing schizophrenia and people who, care for those with schizophrenia. So over the years, charities evolved more into supporting people affected by severe and enduring mental illness. So that's kind of tackling stigma and changing attitudes around mental health and mental illness to improve quality of life. A bit about my job. The day-to-day varies. It's such a dynamic job working in communications, particularly when you're heading up a team. I suppose, the clues in the charity name, Change Mental Health, it's constantly changing. But the core components of my job are to raise awareness of change mental health and how we tackle that stigma around mental health. And that includes raising awareness of the services that we run across the country. And there's so many, which means there's different stakeholders, there's different audiences involved. So you really need to be on it. And I suppose that's where the kind of journalism principles come from, which we'll get onto, I suppose. But it's a really challenging job. It's almost like you're constantly solving puzzles, which I like. And it's kind of like how we educate people on, mental health in a really accessible way. I've mentioned the word stigma a couple of times already. That is a huge problem worldwide with mental health. Not just in the UK, and it's also kind of how we kind of market the charity. So we have so many self-referral services across Scotland that require that visibility of what we do to enable people to access support. Could be like suicide bereavement in the Highland, which is something highly stigmatized as well, where people don't want to be seen to get support in rural areas. So we're trying to obviously tackle that. But branding's a big thing in my remit. Which I was fortunate to rebrand the charity 2 years ago. We were once named Support in Mind Scotland, and I had to lead on that development to become Change Mental Health, which was a huge learning exercise. But the work never really stops. I wouldn't really have it any other way. People often do ask, what do you do? Because communications is such a grand word, and it's a great question. I'm having to deliver succinct and consistent messages to so many audiences, but people, when they ask me what I do, I kind of struggle to package it concisely. Which,
as a communications professional, yeah.
yeah, I know it's not doing my job when I'm socializing with people, am I? But I'm off the clock. But that could be, writing press releases, working with our team, our communications and research team, to sort of deliver mental health resources to help that educating the general public. Crafting social media posts and brand awareness and gaining new opportunities for the charity. Internal comms is a big thing for us as well. So there's always that question of where does communication stop? And it feels like it never does. You're constantly busy, you're doing different things every day, and I love that. But I'm in a very fortunate position now where I work with so many great people with incredible skill sets. Many who are supporting people with their mental health across the country. They're supporting loads of people every week. But I've also worked with some exceptional people in the past, and kind of has enabled me to be who I am now. It's kind of shaped me.
That's fascinating. I'm really interested about what you said there about geographic differences in people's perceptions and approach to mental health, because I think we think about sometimes generational differences and how people approach it differently, but I hadn't thought about it geographically. And I kind of get the sense that the pandemic moved the needle a little bit in terms of mental health awareness and mental health acceptance, I guess, to an extent. Have you seen a difference beyond the sort of before, sort of pre and post pandemic?
Yeah, I don't think we've really hit the peak of a mental health crisis following COVID. And I know COVID it feels like a long time ago, but I think that it's really kind of impacted on people's mental health at a later stage. and all the things that have followed that as well. And you were talking about the geographics of it all as well. You know, living in a rural area could be peaceful, but there's a lack of anonymity to accessing services where people may judge them in their community for accessing a mental health service, but there's also the lack of mental health services that are on the high street and in communities, in rural communities. We're fortunate to kind of, really have a good rural footprint in supporting people with their mental health, but we feel we've never really tackled it fully. You really want to tackle it fully. And we're doing all sorts of stuff to try and help that. We run a forum in terms of working with loads of different organisations and policymakers to, change the perceptions around rural mental health. And that's inclusive of farmers. You've seen a lot of stuff recently around RSABI, an agricultural charity who are doing a lot of work around Keep Talking and supporting farmers' mental health. I'm lucky to work with my manager at Change Mental Health, Jim Hume. He was a former MSP in South Scotland. He's worked a lot on tackling rural mental health too. So we've got a massive advocate in the organisation to do that. 80% of what we deliver is in rural Scotland. But you're right. There's massive barriers living in rural Scotland. Let's not forget that there is also a lot of barriers in urban Scotland as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you were saying about the pandemic, it's not finished washing through yet. And I think we're still feeling the effects. And I think certainly at Napier, as we see, newer cohorts of students coming through, whether they're coming through the school system, had the impact at various points in the school system of isolation and lockdown and coming through. It's still something that I think we're getting to grips with as an organisation in terms of how we support students. I know there's been a real boom and an expansion in our wellness team and our support for students, which is very, very welcomed. But I do think there's still, as you rightly say, I think there's still things that are washing through that we haven't fully grasped yet that we're going to have to find ways to tackle.
Absolutely. And it's good to hear a lot of universities starting to, really focus on mental well-being within students. It was there when I was at Napier. I knew that was a service that was available. But it's good to hear that's more enhanced. Something that we do at Change Mental Health is we run young persons programs. So we actually go into schools and we provide mental health resilience training to teachers and to young people, so they have the tools to equip them with conversations they may have in the future to talk about their own mental health or supporting others with their mental health. It could be in their family, it could be friends. So we do a lot of work with that sort of early intervention and prevention, which will help people moving into university, because that's a huge transition in life, going from school to university. You're changing potential friend groups, you're changing location. It's very unsettling. So it's preparing young people for the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Huge life change. And I'm sure some of the students, this podcast goes out to all our students. So some of the students listening to this will be in their first trimester of their first year. And just kind of adjusting to that process as well. So I could talk about this element of it all day long, but I'm going to take a step back, wind the clock back a little bit, because I'm always interested in people's backstories and what's led them to do what they do and their kind of drives and motivations. So I'm just interested about what's your background, maybe even pre-Napier, and what your background was like, and how you think that might have influenced your choices to be where you are.
Yeah. So I studied journalism at Edinburgh Napier. I always loved writing and I loved music, which kind of, led me to do journalism with the intention that I was going to become a music journalist. And, while I had a bit of experience doing this throughout university, it became such an uphill battle trying to, get opportunities despite all that work I was putting in. I became quite disillusioned, but, part of university was not only to learn the core skills, but to open up opportunities and what else journalism and the media could offer. So I was open to so many different opportunities within journalism as time went on, and I got really interested in investigative journalism, broadcast, print. Working at a newspaper was not something I ever really wanted to do, but the more experience I did, the more familiar I got with it, and felt it was quite an interesting idea to potentially go into it. But after leaving university, this is the doom and gloom section of it. Journalism was not in a great place when I left 7 years ago. And there weren't many opportunities. There was a lot of titles folding. There was some merging into others and creating consortiums, and there was buyouts, and there was a few redundancies, and vacancies weren't appearing. It meant you had to kind of broaden out your career aspirations. In other words, exploring outside journalism. And you almost felt like you didn't really want to betray journalism. You've done that 4 years, and you really want to kind of stick at it and see what it provides. But when you're working like full time in retail, it's not why you went to university. You didn't go to university to become a stock controller in Tesco. Let's be honest. So it was interesting. A school teacher once told me, and my mother, that students who go the long way around achieving things end up the most successful, and that was a bit of an inspiration to me. I was an underperforming school student with no interest in the various subjects on offer at school. I needed that one thing to concentrate on, which was why I really got into academia when I got to university. But I did do college before that, and that maybe gave me a bit of focus. And I had to go that long way around of going to college, then going to university, all in journalism. And it's something I'm really thankful for, because it gave me a lot more time to build that experience, that wealth of experience in journalism, not just in academia, but out with, like working for newspapers, working for broadcasters, working for local titles, having your own thing and trying to grow that as well and seeing what comes out of it. I had my own music blog, which was doing really well, but by the time I got to fourth year, I couldn't really concentrate on it. So it created a lot of opportunities. Also working with PR folk in music really helped me with that relationship between journalists and public relations practitioners, because that's something has been controversial. In fact, I did my dissertation on the relationship between both in music journalism.
Oh, okay.
Turns out it's very cordial. I thought there was going to be a little bit more animosity, but hey, you can't twist the facts. But it's really interesting doing that exercise and kind of working with PR folk, because I now work in communications, and I have to work with journalists to pitch stories to them and try to get what we're doing in the public interest, to get the public and the press talking more about mental health. But kind of back on track about that sort of background, I mean, I was just out of university and there was a lack of opportunities were on offer. I had to go the long way around again, that working in retail and whatnot. And that meant having to gain experience outside working that full-time job in retail, which is really difficult. You or on Monday to Friday, and then you've got your Saturday, Sunday, and you don't really want to do that. So I was just using that sort of little bit of annual leave to kind of build experience, like journalism and PR and communications, and kind of just thinking outside the fold a little bit. And it was job experience with one MSP actually that probably landed me my first job in communications effectively. And my first career boss, who was when I started at Leonard Cheshire, who were a nationwide disability charity, he said the attraction was because of my perseverance in retail, but doing work experience concurrently. It's very easy when you leave university to think, I'm really struggling to get a job and, I don't know what to do about it. And then you end up just firing job applications in and hoping for the best. And I remember applying for some jobs, even like communications and marketing jobs, and it would actually tell you at the bottom of the email, 240 people applied for this one role. Yeah, that's how competitive it was when I left university. So you basically didn't have a hope, really. And this job I went for at Leonard Cheshire, I thought it was a full-time job. It was a part-time job. And just did a part-time role at Tesco, and then got made full-time and really just worked at it. And I was in a fortunate position where they didn't have much communications output already, so we're building something new. But I was new, which is actually, looking back, is terrifying. Not really knowing much about communications, or thinking you don't know much about communications, but actually you've learned a lot through journalism. And my first thing was, where's our media strategy? Where's our crisis communication strategy? Where is, because obviously working for a charity that's part of the care sector, open to all sorts of, potentially reputationally damaging stuff. And where's your sort of media strategy in terms of working with the press? Where's your press lists? Stuff like that. And that got me kind of used to working in communications and realizing this is just the other way around. This is just basically working on the other side of a journalist, but I have to build a relationship with a journalist as well. So it was all about that media management. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like getting into the charity sector, it felt like a little bit like a good mistake. I didn't actually remember applying for the job. I just got an email for, you've got an interview on Monday or whatever it is, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And it's the best decision I've ever made, ever, in the charity sector, because there's so much scope to do great work, and it's so much of a blank canvas at times. It's really difficult, because a charity survives on donations, and survives on kind of building relationships with stakeholders and whatnot. And I just find it really fascinating how it's just a constant thought process. And like when you do something good and something really, really pans out well, you're so satisfied in the work that you've put in, because charities they're small teams, and a lot of work needs to go into things. And honestly, when it pays off, you feel amazing on the back of it. But I've worked in the charity sector for 6 years now. I've worked for a few different charities. I worked for Ewan's Guide, who are a disabled access charity as well, before I came to Change Mental Health. I really wanted to change mental health because I'm really passionate about mental health. Family's got lived experience of mental illness, and it really aligned with the heritage of Change Mental Health and how they started the charity 52 years ago. So it was an absolute no-brainer for me to move into that position, and it felt like I was stepping into a head of communications role too soon. So that was another terrifying kind of notion, was just that this might be a bit too early in my career. But then rebranding a charity and kind of getting comfortable with things, it was almost like starting at Winner Cheshire again and realising, actually, I need to build in a strategy. I need to build, what's the media strategy? You don't have press lists, you don't have crisis comm strategy, you don't have an internal comm strategy. And it was just kind of from there, you build up the team, and then you revamp a charity's identity and brand, and then there's a lot of work that comes on the back of that. And all the learning curves now.
Yeah, that's fascinating. There's a couple of things that really jump out at me on that, Kieran. I think one is, when we look back, it's really common that you look back on something and think, how the hell did I do that? And it almost terrifies you in retrospect. But at the time, it's like, oh, well, I'll give it a go. And it just shows you, I think, that kind of sort of bravery and just taking the step, because that's what's in front of me. I'll try it. And how the sort of training and the experience you got from Napier and your other work kind of you actually had that framework, so you were ready for it, even if you didn't feel ready for it at the time. And I think the other thing that really that highlights for me is that there isn't a route. I think we're so conditioned to think, well, this is the way forward. You do this, you do that, you'll apply for this kind of job, and then that'll move you on to here. And it's almost like a linear progression. And it's so much more of a kind of squiggly sort of pinball type motion in many cases. Is that, well, that didn't work, or maybe a bit of this. And the fact that you did part-time work, and part-time with the Leonard Cheshire, and that you use that hybrid way of building a career. There isn't one right path and one right way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I think at university, this is not me saying this is what would happen in Napier, but this seems to happen across the board, really, is that you're told about the right path, but you're not told about the wrong paths, and it's okay to go down that wrong path, because I think people are given this sort of this ideal world of, you're going to leave university, you're going to go into a full-time job, it's going to pay well, and it's going to satisfy you. It's like, well, in reality, probably not, because you're going to have to take some compromises. Like, I had to take that compromise of, being told over the phone, yeah, you've got this job, but it's part-time. It's like, that's great, but also not so great. But you had to really think about, what's the long-term plan here? Well, potentially they'll make you full-time at some point. If you work hard and you graft hard and you show your value and worth, then they will want to make you full-time, and then you can leave that retail job. But it really, I think for me, is kind of dependent on, it's really dependent on the experience you build at university as well. Because I look back at Napier, and you're probably about to ask me, what's your Napier experience? But I'll preempt it a touch. And that's just that I look back and I think maybe I did the wrong experience at that time, because I was so focused on getting into music journalism, but I genuinely believe I could get into. But really did the wrong experience to kind of get me where I am. And I'm thinking now, I'd have loved to have worked at like a PR agency. I would love to have worked at maybe a charity, but even like sort of private sector communications, just to understand what that was like in that moment, to maybe just flesh out kind of what I really wanted from my career instead of getting into it by accident. Saying that, if I did it another way, I might not even be in the charity sector.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're not as lucky where you just fall into kind of the right place, that, you eventually realize, oh, I do want to be here. But there seems to be a bit of a sort of perception around working in the charity sector where you're like, oh, I would work there. I was kind of like that when I was offered a job at Leonard Cheshire. I was like, do I really want to work in the charity sector? But no, honestly, I would recommend it to anybody. It's just it's a good demanding job. Like I said, the positives there, but you put in a great piece of work and how you feel after it. But yeah, there's a bit of a stigma towards working in the charity sector, which I've always found a little bit odd. But no, I'm glad I fell into place. So.
And it's a good sector to pick up experience in, because there are so many organizations that would welcome people, sharing a bit of their time, a bit of their expertise, whatever their discipline is at Napier, to contribute to, a third sector organization in one way or another. So it's a good sector to try and tip into. But you're right, it's that law of unintended consequence. And you might have tried that, but then you might not have done what you are doing now. And so, yeah, hindsight's a great thing, but we can never sort of retrospectively plan it all through. Absolutely. But it's interesting to look back. So with that in mind, I'm interested. So what we're trying to do, I'll put an emphasis on at Napier, is soft skills, core skills, human skills around personal productivity and effectiveness and resilience, and building up that skill set, because exactly as you've perfectly highlighted, the route won't be straight. It'll go, it'll meander, it'll bounce backwards and forwards. And we need that sort of like those skills in our back pocket in order to face those challenges in those different directions. So I'm interested what kind of skills you found have been the most useful in that respect, and how you've developed those skills. I think some of the story you've shared has already started to touch on that.
Yeah, I said earlier on that I still use the main components of journalism that I was taught at university during my career. For the last 6 years, I have used a lot of the learning I got from Napier in journalism. It's never left me. Writing for news has enabled me to learn how to craft press releases when I first started at Leonard Cheshire, because I'd never written one before. So then again, probably that PR experience that I might have gotten at university, if I really, went for that would have helped me. But there's not much difference. It's very easy to pick up when you kind of know how to write for news. And like also really helped me just kind of how you attract, journalists to your pitches, or anyone to your in general pitches, like how to sell something effectively.
Yeah.
I got some, unbelievably harsh criticism at university for my writing, and it's very understandable because I looked back and I just took things so personally when I got told, this is not good writing, or I really took it to heart. And now I don't take it to heart. When anyone goes through my writing, I'm like, fair enough. There's obviously a reason why. But it's that sort of what probably happened around year 2, third year, where it taught me how to take constructive criticism and feedback.
Okay.
And I actually think it's a bit of a skill that nobody really talks about, and it's taking feedback. And I suppose, is it a skill? It's kind of falls within our personality, but I believe you can learn how to take criticism. I mean, I've worked with people before where even in my current job, worked with people where they've struggled to take criticism, and it's kind of like just making sure that this is not personal. This is just for good. This is for the organization to really flourish with consistent messaging, and it's not criticism against you and your writing. It's just you need to try and stylistically fit into a certain fold. But one thing I must admit that really helped me at university was public speaking. Okay. Now, doing broadcast journalism, sitting in front of a camera, or speaking into a microphone, even had my own show on radio, ENRG, if that's still in existence, which I'm sure it is. I believe they had the anniversary of it recently. That really helped me to be more confident with job interviews and talking to a room full of people and delivering presentations. And now I feel like I used to get really agitated, like sitting in meetings, and like when it comes to me and I have to talk, I was like, I find that really daunting when everyone around a table in a meeting room is staring at you. And to a certain degree, I still do, but I'm better with that now. And I kind of think, when people are like a room full of people are looking at me, I just remind myself back to doing like news days in journalism in Napier. Just having that massive camera at the other end of the room, just staring at you, just thinking it could be worse, you know. And I suppose it's helped me work with people as well, because journalism is all about people, and you know, it's helped me understand how to build relationships with people, which I think is very important for working together and to, you know, help each other with the greater good. Working with different organizations, you know, but we do a lot of stakeholder engagement and change mental health. So it's not just having meetings internally, it's having meetings externally, but building relationships two-way that happen internally and externally. So that's one thing that really helped me starting at Winter Cheshire, was knowing that I need to build relationships to actually get some advancement. So I think those are the main sort of skills that really help me in my sort of day-to-day, thinking back from Napier. I think it's the one good thing about doing journalism in particular is that I think it really brings out your confidence, because it's really hard to tell a first year to go, I want you to go out and interview 4 people, and they'll struggle to do it, they'll shy away from it. But you see the difference. By end of 4th year, everyone's going up to people in the street asking for vox pops, voices of the people, and it just definitely made me sort of more confident, for sure.
Excellent. That's really interesting. So 3 things that jumped out at me there. The first one I'll come to is the last point you mentioned about, you know, you really have to push yourself out there to do it. And it is that you know, this is university is where you go to get it wrong. It's where you go to make mistakes, you know, and this is the best place to learn it all. So yeah, try and step outside of that comfort zone and do those things that scare you, because this is the place to do it. I think what you said about feedback is 100% on the money. We've got one of our topics in the Resilient Skills program is all about feedback. If we don't have that, it's, you know, you're practicing archery in the dark. You've no idea whether you're good, bad, or indifferent unless you get that feedback. It doesn't mean that it's comfortable, and it still isn't comfortable. I know a lot of us still find it uncomfortable at times, but it's embracing that is the way to move forward. And I think the third thing for me was when you talked about public speaking and being in meetings and still feeling uncomfortable. And again, it's a bit like that linear progression of career. We have this idea that, well, this is something that I'm not comfortable with, and I just need to do whatever it needs to do. And on the other side, I'll be comfortable. It'll be easy. I won't need to worry about it. And no, feedback might still be uncomfortable. Public speaking in meetings might still be uncomfortable. Our goal isn't to make it easy and I can do that without thinking. Our goal is just to be able to do it. And for some of us, yeah, we might get to the point where we're really comfortable and we're going to go off and, you know, create a stand-up career. For others, it's just about, well, I know I'm actually comfortable just answering a question in a meeting. And though it's a different level of comfort, and where we start and where we get to for each of us is different. And there isn't a kind of prescribed path or success point. You know, it changes for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I've not taken up a stand-up comedy career. I don't think I would really have the bravado to be able to do that. I know some people from journalism in my course that have, and I'm like, fair play to you. Must have helped you in some way.
Yeah, it's definitely an advanced step. And listen, that's fantastic, Ian. My final question, and this is one that the last question that we asked to all alumni when we interview them, is what would your advice be to the graduating you? So if you were stepping out of that hall today with that scroll in your hand, what would be the one main piece of advice that you would give to yourself at that point?
I would say to myself, you need to lose weight, Kieran, because you ate too much when you were doing your dissertation. I did. From a serious career perspective, I think it's get out there and just start getting work experience immediately. Because I think what I did when I graduated, actually, the day I handed in my dissertation, I was kind of like, what now?
Mm-hmm.
What now? You'd spent months and months and months with that academia, and you'd really, really focused on getting it done and getting it done really well. It was just like everything dropped, and I felt quite down after like finishing my dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
What I really should have done is the following Monday was started looking for work experience. And I think one advice to students, and this is just one thing I was kind of thinking about earlier on, was that if you're going for work experience, don't just email and say, I'm looking for work experience. You email and say, I'm looking for work experience because I'm looking to develop this skill set. This is what I'm looking to go into. And I think in a roundabout way, this is going to help me. I think a lot of students, we're told to ask for work experience, but we don't really communicate why we're doing it. It almost feels like, well, we have to do it because, it might be part of the course, demands to do that. But I think it's really helpful if you communicate why you're doing that. And I wish after after I handed in my dissertation and after I graduated, I just immediately went, right, let's look for work experience. And let's look for work experience in different areas. And I know every subject's completely different. But for me, anyway, it was kind of like, how can I build experience in different areas, which would really lend itself to an enhanced CV when you are applying for jobs. And you've developed a lot more skills than, on top of what you've learned at university and you've just left. You get lazy a little bit, and then it gets that sort of robotic, let's just apply for jobs. I also would, one thing I kind of wish I'd done was just to sort of seek employment advice.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I didn't do at Napier, and I know that's there at Napier. There's a service there to help people with their CV and their cover letters and how they can look employable, basically. And that's one thing I kind of wish I'd done as well, because imagine an employer that's having to sift through 200 CVs. It's grueling. So I kind of wish I'd just taken that moment to not go, okay, that's me leaving Napier, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Utilize services at Napier, but also, and they can help you get work experience as well as your employability chances in terms of enhancing your CV and cover letter. So there's a couple of things I kind of wish I did, and I know they sound almost a little kind of like weak, but they would have been really important in kind of enhancing my employability after university for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I think standing on that stage and then you come off the stages, don't take your hand off, don't take your eye off the pulse, just immediately go straight into it and just think now it's an opportunity to start really starting my career and building on it.
No, that's really valuable. And like you say, hindsight's 2020. And so the value of sharing these, this advice now is that you're sharing that 2020 vision with students that are graduating now. And I think that tip around articulating what you want to get from the work experience and the fact that this is your time and your opportunity to do it. If an organization gets 10 people asking about work experience and one of them said, it's because I want to do this and this is what I want to learn, it shows that depth of thinking. It really moves the needle and advances your chances. And also appreciating the standout, although we didn't plan this in advance, but the shout out for the careers team and my colleagues on the careers side who absolutely can support students to get their CVs and get their eye in terms of where they want to go and what they want to do. So listen, we've gone over half an hour, so I don't want to push it too much and push my luck, but I just want to say thank you so much, Kieran, for your time and for the depth of thought that you put into this conversation today and for the experiences you've shared. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me, David, and thank you very much for Napier for having me back for another occasion. It's always good to chat.
No problem. Thanks again.
Thank you.